This is stuff you like, and the youth of today, well, there are highs and lows. We're looking at iGen by Twenge today, and the book's full title is iGen, Why Today's Super Connected Kids Are Growing Up Less Rebellious, More Tolerant, Less Happy, and Completely Unprepared for Adulthood, *, and what that means for the rest of us. So first I have to say that this is a very American book because Twenge is a researcher and all of the data she uses is from American surveys. And that makes it a really focused book, and that's kind of nice. She doesn't talk a lot about what other countries are doing, but that's because she doesn't have the data on it. iGen is about young people in the United States today, people born from about 1995 onwards, how they differ from their parents and grandparents at the same ages, and how we can help them with the problems that their parents and grandparents didn't have. As a book, I like iGen because it's informative, it's easy to read, and it doesn't moralize, it doesn't blame. It doesn't tell you that all of the problems that iGen are having are the kids' fault, or the parents' fault, or society's fault, or I don't know, somebody's fault. Twenge tells you what she sees in the generational data, and then she offers some suggestions to improve the problems. And those suggestions are not particularly controversial ones. For example, higher rates of depression are bad, and so here are some ways that we might fix it. Get off your phone and go to sleep. No, I mean it. Should you be asleep right now? I will still be here in the morning. If you should, you can put the phone down. That is what the watch later button is for. So iGen as a group are less likely to get pregnant as teenagers, they're less likely to binge drink as teenagers, they're less likely to smoke, they're less likely to take drugs, and all of these things are good. On the other hand, their levels of anxiety and depression as a group are very high. Twenge is a generational researcher, and so she describes the graphs which usually mark the changes between generations as, gentle slopes. Things go up, things go down, but generally not dramatically. iGen, however, is nothing if not dramatic. So the bulk of the book is a series of chapters on the main points about iGen and how they differ from their predecessors. They're less rebellious, they're less religious, they're more concerned with safety, particularly emotional safety. Casual sex, oh, make sure not to catch feelings. I'm not sure how you prevent yourself from catching feelings, but there we are. C.S. Lewis would have a field day. After all, to love at all is to be vulnerable. And iGen are also generally more emotionally fragile when presented with beliefs that conflict with their own, hence all of those generation snowflake cracks in the media. I find the chapter on safety particularly interesting because Twenge draws on a point that she makes earlier, where iGen see childhood as safety and adulthood as scary and dangerous, and links it to campus safe spaces. After all, safe spaces often involve childlike elements, beanbags, puppy videos, colouring books. And she also explains how colleges and universities are increasingly having to take on a more parent-like role as mediator between the students. iGen may leave home to go to college, but they increasingly seem to want quasi-parental oversight while they're there, or even actual parental oversight, actually. In March 2016, some Emory University students chalked the words Trump 2016 onto the footpaths, and some other Emory University students responded with a protest and cries of, "You are not listening, come speak to us, we are in pain." But where can you work that people won't disagree with you? Where can you live? Where can you go? How can you be in a relationship with someone? Because they're bound to disagree with you on something at some point. Possibly even something very fundamental. And it's also the case that iGen are marrying and having children later than their predecessors. Presumably by that point they've worked out how to constructively disagree. So maybe they're just getting to it later. Now, I do not assume, and nor does Twenge, to be fair, that every single iGener is a fainting flower who can't cope with disagreement. But these individual incidents she talks about are often illustrative of the general trend. The general trends being longer childhoods and increased preference for authority figures to mediate things. In popular imagination, your teenage years are the time you're most rebellious, when you throw off the shackles of parental involvement and you do your own thing. But that doesn't seem to be the case for iGen. They're dating less in their teens, they're having sex less, they're getting drunk less. It seems that increasingly those teenage rebellions are being put off until their late teens or early 20s, or maybe they're just bypassing them entirely. The social media stuff that Twenge talks about always gets the most attention because people like to say that the smartphone are going to kill us all. But it is an important aspect of the book, and she presents some very compelling research that says that too much time spent on a smartphone is very bad in a number of different ways. Too much time on social media doesn't just make you feel more depressed and more anxious, it also messes up your sleep, for example, which is another thing that will make you more depressed and more anxious. So it's really a vicious circle. As to what that means for the US as a society, it remains to be seen. And the kids are gonna be alright, I'm sure. But if you want to know what Twenge recommends for the worrying things about iGen, well, you're probably not going to be very surprised by them because most of them are really common sense. Too much use of social media is not only correlated with depression and anxiety, it actively makes it worse. So get off your phone. Limit the time you spend on it. Don't have your phone next to your bed. Just buy a regular alarm clock. There is no real substitute for spending time with people in person, so you should do that. And if you're trying to be a good parent to iGen, remember that resilience and teaching kids independence and self-reliance are as important as keeping them safe. After all, at some point they're going to have to learn to do everything without you. May as well be sooner rather than later. So have you read iGen? Did you agree or disagree with Jean Twenge's take on your generation, or the generation below you if you're an old person like I am? And if you're outside the US like me, have you seen the same general trends that she talks about in the US in your own country? And which country is that? You can tell us in the comments. And remember that whether you want to agree or disagree or leave a comment that's entirely unrelated, if I see you making personal attacks on other people, they will be deleted because we can disagree constructively. That's a thing that we can do because we're grown-ups. Or if we're not actually all grown-ups, we are at least all reasonably emotionally mature people. So thank you for watching. If this was your first ever video, welcome! You should subscribe if you liked it and want more stuff like this. Thank you as always to my patrons who are wonderful and lovely and make this show possible. And regardless, I will see you all very soon.